Big Red protected me. I was never hurt. I was never slapped. I was never punched. No one tried to have sex with me. He kept me safe.
So really a guardian angel.
Yes, for a Hell's Angel.
Yeah,
he was a guardian angel, right?
But he rolled up on two wheels and really, really
Saved my
at
life.
your lowest point saved your life.
Welcome to our podcast, I Never Lied, the Shelly Ann story. Our first 3 episodes are proudly brought to you by TELUS STORYHIVE. Stats Canada reports that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys will be abused before the age of 12. Many of these victims never receive the mental health therapy they need, leaving them trapped in the deep-rooted confines of anger, grief, guilt, and so much more. And this is becoming our new normal. During this 3-part podcast series, I will take you on a step-by-step journey through my life as a child and the disturbing, unfortunate events brought upon me by my stepfather and my mother. I will share my experience of being sent to Kilburn Hall, a youth detention center, at the age of 14, just for reporting my abusers. I will share many of the struggles I faced to overcome the deep-rooted adverse effects of the abuse I suffered before my healing began and where I am today. I will speak openly and honestly without fear of judgment or retaliation. I live in the city of Lloydminster. These are the famous border markers that separate the province of Saskatchewan and province of Alberta. You have to choose which province you want to live in. It is one or the other. To me, and in relation to this podcast, these border markers represent the idea that when it comes to childhood trauma and abuse, you must pick a side. On one side, you can choose to remain silent, believe this is a taboo subject, and not get involved. Or you can step on the other side and reach out to others, either to help or to get help. Just like the border markers, this is one area that you cannot live on the fence. If you try to, you will eventually fall off. In this series of podcasts, I'm hoping to educate, inform, and inspire you to stand up against childhood trauma and abuse. And if you are a victim, I want you to know that you're not alone.
Everyone has broken pieces. No one is complete. There's no such thing as perfection. It's just not within reach. The puzzle inside is coming together, and I believe it's getting better. It's getting better.
Here's the fact. If you have never been a victim of trauma or abuse, you will definitely know someone who has. This is something that no one wants to talk about. It's a total taboo subject. Many victims have been told that good girls don't talk about things like that, or it was a long time ago, just get over it. As a woman who has suffered from extreme abuse, I can tell you that there is no getting over it. Most victims are left feeling alone and trapped within their stories. Their self-esteem has tanked and they generally carry the guilt and the shame of what happened to them. My intent with this podcast is to help other victims trapped in the deep-rooted adverse effects of abuse learn that their life now is a consequence of things that happened to them and not by them. To encourage them to release themselves from the pain and to change their lives. Most abusers are family members, family friends, or people in position of authority over the child. Coaches, teachers, babysitters, and so many more, all of which parents unknowingly give access to their children. Abusers are very careful when choosing the victim. They will look for the weakest link, a child they can groom into the abuse and, most importantly, into silence. As a victim in recovery, I guilted myself for what happened to me. I carried the blame and I owned it. I never even understood why I still loved my parents after everything they did to me, and it took a very wise person to explain that when a child is abused by someone they love, they don't stop loving their abuser. They actually stop loving themselves. This is what begins the process of the many, many self-abusive behaviors a victim will face in their lifetime. Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of our podcast, I Never Lied, the Shelly Ann story. I'm Shelly Ann. Tonight we're going to talk about a very taboo subject. We're going to discuss the things that I experienced as a child and how that related to me as an adult. I've invited my dear friend Yvonne Dunn to join me in this discussion to make it just a little bit easier. Not an easy subject. So welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you, Shelly, and what an honor it is to be chosen to sit and have this conversation with you. I agree, it's not going to be an easy night. We're really going to try and do a deep dive into your childhood, and we'll just take it as it comes. Okay?
I'm ready.
Okay. So let's go back as far as you can remember in your childhood, and what's your first memory of you and your family together?
I think the hard part for me, looking back at my childhood, is if I want to think of good times, I can remember being with my grandparents, my great-grandparents, all the cookums and mushums, and really going through life lessons and having great fun. But if I think about myself and my family, my brain triggers right back to not very nice stuff. A lot of fighting and swearing and just really not nice stuff.
Right. What about holidays?
Holidays? You know, the holidays that we took, I remember going out to, we used to go to Attons Lake all the time. It was fun because my parents would put mattresses all throughout the back of the old grain truck and take us out there, and we kind of camped out inside the back of the truck, and it was fun. Always turned into nightmare of some kind because, of course, all the adults were drinking, and yeah, it wasn't good. If we took vacations, it was always to a family member's house. You know, going down to Ontario to see my grandparents, and
Did you guys drive out there?
yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I know that your childhood was not typical. How many times did your family move while you were still at home?
Well, you know, my sister and I sat down to try to figure that out. And for the best of her memory and for mine, from the ages of, from when I was born until I was about 12, we moved to 24 different places.
Wow. So how many different schools did you go to then?
Oh, at least 24. You know, we went to school in Dawson Creek, BC. We went to school in Edmonton. We went to school in Cuttenknife. We went to school in Battleford. We went to school in Ear Falls. We went to school in Dryden. I mean, we went to school pretty much everywhere.
So what effect did all these moves have on you? How did that impact your life?
Well, when you're always moving and you never know when that move is going to come, because sometimes it was in the middle of the night, or sometimes it was like it was never planned. It was never, you never had advance warning. So the fear then became, how do you make relationships with people? And you can't look back and say, well, I had great friends.
Right.
Right? We hung with kids in whatever neighborhood we were living in, but you never really bonded, never had a chance to bond with anybody.
Can you tell me why you moved that often?
Well, sometimes it was because my stepdad's job. I mean, he was a power lineman, and sometimes you just had to go where the work was. Other times it was because they had a drunken fight, and rather than face the community, they would move. Sometimes they got behind on a bunch of bills and didn't want to pay them, and so they moved. Sometimes they just weren't comfortable living where they were anymore, and away we go.
In your book, you've talked a lot about instability and violence in your childhood and in growing up. Were there addiction issues as well?
Oh, absolutely. Alcoholism all the way. You know, when you talk about holidays and things like that, I never looked forward to Christmas. I never looked forward to Thanksgiving. I never looked forward to it because my aunts and my uncles and my parents, it'd become a big drinking party. You know, you have a beautiful meal. My mom was a fantastic cook. She made a spread that every chef in the world would be jealous of. But after dinner and the drinks came out, man, sometimes it was like a bloodbath war. And I mean bloodbath war. You know, I can't even tell you how many times us kids ran out of the house just to get the police to come and help. So there's all your adults, and there's the people who are supposed to be the good ones, and they're the ones that are punching each other out. And threatening to kill each other and calling them, each other horrific names. And so that was Christmas,
Right.
right? That was Thanksgiving. It was always very scary when they said, oh, everybody's coming home.
That really was kind of my next question for you, Shelly, is I know as a child, we didn't have the same addiction issues in our home. We had addiction issues, but not to the level that you have had. So I understand some of it, and I do know that as a child, we learn very quickly that when that bottle comes out, it's a trigger not just for the adults to begin partying,
But it becomes a fear factor for the child.
Yes. Yes.
It's not like we weren't, as kids, it's not like I wasn't happy to see my aunts and uncles.
Right.
But I always dreaded it because I always knew what was going to happen.
You were surrounded by addiction, correct?
Absolutely.
So it wasn't just one parent.
I remember my mother drinking. I really do. But I think when I was in like grade 4, she got diagnosed with diabetes. And so I don't ever recall her drinking after that.
Can you tell me about your relationship with your mother?
Oh my God. Let's just dive right in, right?
Well, hey, you brought it up. I just thought I'd step right in there for you. I told you it was going to be difficult.
And it is. So
yes, I know.
I was a child who begged and pleaded for God to let my mother love me. And she just never did. As years went by and I got older, I started to learn about the story about my real father, which I didn't actually find out that my stepfather was not my father until I was 13 years old.
Right, that was hidden from you, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
She just wasn't a person you could love. I mean, or you could love her, but she couldn't love you back.
Right.
I never, as a mother, this is more painful to me now because you couldn't walk up to my mother and hug her. I mean, she literally would shrug you off and tell you to get off of her.
Right.
I never cuddled with her on the couch. I never sat on her knee. There was no little winks of tenderness or I love you. Nothing. I came in the middle of a divorce. At one point in my life, she said that she had children already, didn't want another one. So she went to the doctor to get an abortion, and he refused to do it because she was too far pregnant. And so she decided to try to have an abortion on her own. Well, that failed because I'm here.
Of course. Thank goodness.
I did spend the first 6 months of my life in the hospital. She would come and stand and stare at me through the windows, but she never came in. There was no bonding between us at all. She said to me one time, well, we have to talk about why we don't love each other. And I thought, I love you. I don't know. I knew she didn't love me. I knew that. You can't raise a child belittling them and humiliating them and hurting them and telling them just suck it up and get over it. Don't be such a baby, and then when something happens in your life, you've made a mistake, or she would humiliate you. She would take that story and she would just tell the world, because every time she could make you feel stupid, it made her feel better.
Right.
I was always told I was ugly, I was stupid, I was useless, I was never going to amount to anything, and that's my mom who told me that.
Yeah.
And the worst part, I think, is that she belittled me to the point that even my own siblings couldn't see any value in me.
Right.
I was her target, and so I became their target.
Understandably so, when they only know what they know and what they've been taught. So where are you in the pecking order of your siblings? Are you the youngest? Are you a middle child? Are you the oldest?
Second youngest.
Second youngest. Out of how many kids?
5.
5. And you all grew up in the same household?
Yes.
The relationship with your siblings was greatly impacted.
It was destroyed.
Yes. Yeah.
What mother, and I'm sorry to put it this way, but what mother pits one child against the other? What mother will stand over two children fighting, physically fist fighting, and cheer one on and tell her, get her, get her, get her. A mother doesn't do that.
Right.
But our mother did do that.
Right. You had mentioned earlier that your mother hurt you. And you're talking about the physical hurt the siblings brought on each other. The hurt that was brought to you by your mom wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just saying to you that you're worthless, but she used to beat the crap out of you, did she not?
She did. She did. She was a person who would just smack you. I mean, she would hit you with whatever she could get her hands on, closest to, right?
Right.
I remember one time I was accused of stealing some money from a teacher, and was very quickly proven that night that I didn't do it. But before she looked for any evidence, she beat me, and I mean beat me with the belt, the buckle end of a belt, and like literally was beating me. And I was at the top of the basement stairs, and she pushed me down the stairs and then came down after me again. And it wasn't until my sister started screaming for my stepdad to stop her, because she was sure that my mom was going to kill me before it stopped. You know, we went to the police station that night, and the girl that I had been with, who had actually stolen the money, admitted it to everybody, that I didn't know anything about it. And the only thing my mom could do was look at me and say, well, at least you'll never steal.
It's a difficult way to parent.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's amazing that you're still here with us, Shelly. It is amazing that you are still here. So you got this treatment for your mom all the time. I'm sure she had her moments, but did she beat the other children?
She got physical with everybody.
Right.
You know, she was a person who picked on you if you were fat, or if you were... She would pick your weakest issue and then just attack you with it.
Right. Like chickens in a hen house, right?
Right.
Yeah. On the other side of that, what was the relationship with your stepfather like? You know, if you're facing this with your mother, where was your other parent? How did that evolve for you?
You know, it's hard for me to refer to him as my stepfather, because I always knew him as dad. I mean, until I was 13, I carried his last name. He was my dad, for all intents and purposes. And I'm not going to say he was a nice guy, because he had his moments. He could be nice. He could be fun. But he did some really cruel things to us kids. When it came to my mom, when he was home, and he worked on the road a lot, when he would come home, she'd like basically stand us up at the door line and read off our list of evil duties, or
Your sins of the day?
yeah, that we had done.
Yeah,
And he would scream, get upstairs and get ready. And that meant go upstairs, pull your pants down, laying over the bed, because you're getting a licking.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But he treated us all the same. If one was getting a licking, we were all getting a licking. If we, you know, he was mean. His favorite words were, can it, shut up, I don't want to hear from you. But for the most part, I have to tell you, I mean, I saw a lot of fighting between him and my mom. A lot.
Physical fighting.
Yes. But he protected me from her. And doesn't that sound stupid?
Yes.
It's not that she couldn't hit me when he was home or be mean, but for the first 12 years of my life, she couldn't be as mean when he was home, because he would tell her to stop it. He would tell her, that's enough, knock it off. He did a lot of really bad mind play. I remember we had a dog, and her name was Goldie, and she was a golden retriever, and she was absolutely beautiful. And there was a male dog that would attack other dogs that went anywhere near her. His resolve was to take our dog and take us kids and take us to the dump and watch while he shot her. He killed one of our cats the same way. He shot it in the head. He made us kids aware, you know. So he played a lot of mental games. He would get drunk, and I remember him taking a pellet gun one time and shooting at all of our pictures on the walls and telling us, one day, this is really going to happen. He was so cruel. I mean, so cruel. When he was being him at the worst, he was so cruel. And I never grew up with the question, would he kill me or kill my siblings? Would he kill us? I always wondered when.
Right.
It wasn't
There was never
if,
doubt.
it was when. And he made that clear. More than once, he said he would kill us all.
We really get a clear picture of the turmoil in the home, and that it might not have been every second of every day, but it was certainly planted in your brain so that it was in your brain every second of every day, and you lived in fear all the time. But every once in a while you had kind of a safe spot with your stepdad, because he did protect you from your mom. At what age did he start abusing you? And do you think that his kindness or perceived kindness was him grooming you to trust him?
Absolutely. I was 12 years old. We had been staying out at my grandparents' farm. Long story short, they came home from a party. There was a massive blow-up fight. I remember him attacking my mom's head with a 3-pronged garden rake. There was blood on the ceiling, there was blood on the walls, there was screaming, there was yelling. It was like total chaos and commotion. When they got us out of that house over to my grandmother's house, I can remember her standing on the doorstep screaming, "Get out of here, get out of here, I've already called the police." I remember sitting in the house, I was never so scared in my life, and I heard him kick through the outside deadbolted door. And then he kicked his way into the house through the second deadbolted door. And he had a gun, and he was going to kill everybody. But just then you could see the police lights coming down the road. And he went out of the house. And I remember looking through the front windows, and he's standing there in the yard with my brother. And he was holding a knife to my brother's throat. The police were out of their cars, they had their guns out, and they were telling him to drop the knife or they were going to shoot him. And after a fair bit of screaming and yelling and everything back and forth, he finally put the knife down and let my brother go. And I'll never forget his words, because he said, as he got into the back of the car, he looked at us and said, "If it takes me the rest of my life, I'm going to kill you." And he got in the car and he left. And they took him to, I'm not really sure where they took him first, but I know he ended up in the Saskatchewan Mental Hospital for observation. When he was about to be released from there a few months later, my mother had us children make the decision as to whether he could come home or not.
That's a pretty heavy burden for kids.
So, of course, we said yes, and he came home. So it wasn't long after he came back to the house that was the first time that he touched me. And he said to me that night, "If you tell anybody, I'm going to kill you."
And you
I knew
absolutely believed him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was no doubt in my mind. I watched what he had done to my mom out at the farm. I watched what he did to my siblings.
Yes.
There's no doubt in my mind that when he said, "I'm going to kill you,"
Yes.
he would.
And he said that he was going to kill every one of you in front of the police.
Yes. I had no reason to doubt him.
Yes.
So then the second time that he touched me, he said, "You should have told. You must have liked it. And now it's your fault. And you can go ahead and tell, because nobody's going to care. And nobody's going to listen to you. So suck it up."
Because it's just you, right?
It's just me. Doesn't matter. It was just me.
Right. It started slowly, but it has a tremendous impact. How long did the abuse go on for?
The rapes happened until I was 14 years old. When I was 13, he actually raped a friend of mine in front of me and made me watch. He tried to get me to phone friends and get them to come over to the house. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
I
And
would imagine, yeah.
That went till I was about 14.
Okay. I can imagine how difficult that was. You've moved how many times in your lifetime? You have difficulty making and keeping friends because you're never in one place for very long.
Right.
And then the friends that you can make, he wants
To hurt them.
to hurt them. Yeah. That would have left you pretty alone,
Right.
I would think.
I had nowhere to go. I had nobody I could tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I am a victim of abuse, and I know that many victims have multiple abusers. What's your experience?
My cousin raped me in my grandmother's basement. I was only about 12, maybe starting 13. When I told, the only thing that they did was come and take me off the farm. One of my mother's foster kids touched me. And instead of trying to get help or anything, she left it. But when my brother found out, he pulverized the guy. He couldn't deal with it and took care of the situation.
Couldn't sit back and watch anymore.
No.
When you told, was it your mother that you told? Was she aware of these other abusers?
Oh, my mother absolutely knew about both of them. Absolutely. But she didn't do anything.
That was her total reaction? Just nothing?
Nothing. I was a problem maker as far as she was concerned. So why not
Did
one more
she,
problem?
But did she believe you, Shelly? Do you think that she
She
believed?
never spoke to me.
That's got to be incredibly invalidating. I feel some real pain when you say that, because we all...
I had nobody to tell.
Yeah.
I told my grandparents what my cousin did to me that night in the basement.
And what was their reaction?
They sent me home. They told my parents to come and get me. And they did. And then they took me home. And that was it. Nothing was ever said, ever.
Wow. So I know that you have said to me, and we've talked about this often, survivors carry guilt. And I know that you've carried guilt. Tell me why.
Well, I mean, the first reason I would carry guilt is because I didn't say anything the first time he touched me.
But you thought you were going to die if you did.
Yeah. I carried guilt because I feel responsible for my friend being put in a position to him have access to her, which I didn't know he was going to be home that night. I carry guilt because after 2 years of constant abuse from him, knowing I couldn't go to anybody else, and knowing if I did tell somebody that he would kill me, I really made a serious attempt to take my own life. And when I woke up in the hospital the next day, my mother stood beside the bed with a social worker and said, "Oh, she wasn't trying to hurt herself. She just didn't want to go to school." And then her and the social worker left the room, and my stepdad leaned over the bed and said, "Nice try, sweetheart. Next time you try something like this, I'm going to kill your brothers and sisters, and you're going to watch." You know, I was already feeling like such a failure in my life that I couldn't even commit suicide,
Of course.
which just stacked it on, right?
Of course. Did the abuse continue after that suicide attempt?
Yes.
Okay.
Not long after that, because of the suicide attempt, I was made to see a psychiatrist. And I saw him for a while. But we were always told to shut up. We weren't allowed to tell anybody what was going on in our home.
Of course.
And so one day he looked at me and he said, "I know what's going on, but I can't do anything if you don't tell me."
And this is what the psychiatrist said
Yes.
to you. Okay.
And so I just told him. And he listened.
And
And he said, "We can help. I can help." You know, it was like a little whirlwind, tornado, storm of police and social workers and making statements. And
did you have hope?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, for God's sake, somebody's finally going to help me. Take me out of it.
Yes. They're going to save you. What happened, Shelly?
Well, Turns out that my mother convinced social services and the police that I had made it all up, that I had lied and nothing was the truth. They never questioned my friend. They never. I got up one morning at 6 o'clock. My mother told me, get up, we need to talk. She took me into the kitchen, and the social worker sitting at the table drinking coffee. That's the day she told me, we have to talk about why we don't love each other.
Mm-hmm.
She told me that she didn't love me because every time she looked at me, she could see what my father had done to her. Mm. Cheating on her when she was pregnant, leaving her with me and the rest of the kids.
Right.
And that she hated me for it.
Right.
And I was floored. I mean, who tells their 14-year-old suicidal child,
mm-hmm.
I don't love you?
Mm-hmm.
Never did.
Right. Right.
But she's packing a suitcase for me as she's saying this, and I'm thinking, at least they're going to get me out of this house. I thought foster care, you know.
Somewhere better. Yes. Anywhere better. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because, see, when my dad said, you should have told,
mm-hmm.
now it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have been very surprised when we pulled up outside Kilburn Hall.
Kilburn Hall, from what I understand, is a juvenile detention center, correct?
Yes.
It's like prison for kids.
Yes.
For delinquents.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where I went. And they locked me up for 6 months. And for 6 months, they brought my family there. Not often, but they brought my family in. And they would have these, well, if you weren't so bad, and if you weren't a liar, and if you weren't this, and if you weren't that, then things would be different. I had social workers in there telling me, or counselors telling me, if you just tell the truth, we'll let you go. 6 months. I was under lock and key. Mm-hmm. I'm the one who spent time in detention room. I'm the one who got strip searched and showered. It was like being raped all over again by another stranger.
Exactly. Did they tell you why they put you there?
No.
Wow. So the psychiatrist,
Yeah.
you told,
Yes.
he believed you.
Yes. He said he
Where
did.
was he in all this?
I don't know.
What happened?
I don't know. I never saw him again.
At least we know the records are there.
Yes.
And he did believe you.
Yes, he did.
After 6 months in Kilburn Hall, which I'm sure was traumatic
Yes.
for a girl who had just been through a lot of years of a lot of trauma. What happened to you after Kilburn Hall?
They put me into a foster home for unwed mothers. I had never been pregnant, but and it would have been fine because the foster parents were fantastic people. Mm-hmm. Except they gave my mother access to me. And my mother would be in the foster home telling the foster mother what a terrible person I am and how stupid, and be careful because she lies. She doesn't know how to tell any truth of any kind. And I couldn't take it anymore. And so the social worker that put me in the foster home came and said, either you deal with it this way or you're on your own.
And how old were you?
15.
Right.
So I said, I guess I'm on my own. And I moved out of the foster home.
Where did you go?
To the street. I didn't have anywhere else to go. I lived on the street for some time, and then sometime I stayed with friends, and sometimes I'd go back on the street because I had nowhere to go. I kind of wore out my welcome.
What about school?
What about school? I didn't get to go. I didn't have anywhere to live. I didn't have food to eat. There was no school.
Children who've been through trauma oftentimes end up with addictions as adults. They try and mask their pain. What about you?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Let me tell you, alcohol became my best friend. Because
Yeah.
when I was drunk, I didn't have to look to see who I was.
Right.
I didn't have to remember me, the terrible, awful person. You know, I had been to jail. He said it was my fault. I went to jail, not him. I did.
Right.
That meant I was a bad person.
Right.
And if I drank, then I didn't have to look at myself. I didn't have to see myself. I didn't have to, it was like a forget about it tool almost. I drank every day. But one of the things that I learned from my family is that alcohol and violence go hand in hand. And I started hanging with the rough crowd because they would take care of me. And, you know, I started getting in trouble and broke the law. And when I was absolutely destitute and I hadn't eaten for a few days and I had nowhere to live, I went to my sister for help. And she wanted to help me, but
She wouldn't help you?
my brother wasn't going to let her.
Oh.
And so he kicked me out of the front door of his house into the middle of the street and beat the crap out of me. And told me, I wish you were dead. Why don't you just get out of our lives? I hate you.
He believed what he was told by your parents,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So he thought you were a bad person.
Yes.
And he took it out on you because he didn't want you back because you were bad?
Yes. I decided in my stupidity that I had one good thing going for me, sex. And I was homeless and I had no money and social services wouldn't help me. Nobody would help me. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go and make a living at it. And I was still beaten up and battered and bruised and whatever, and went hitchhiking from North Battleford to Saskatoon. And a couple of motorcycles pulled over. And I'm just going to tell you, the guy's name was Big Red. And he could see the condition I was in, and he asked me where I was going, and I said to Saskatoon. And he said, for, and I said, to get a place to live and to support myself. He asked me who beat me up, and I told him, and he said, oh, okay, get on, I'll give you a ride to Saskatoon. I ended up going to their club and staying there, and I lived there for almost 6 months. Yeah, I had to do regular chores around the place and, you know, cook and clean and whatever, and saw probably more stuff than I ever wanted to, which I would never talk about, but
Right.
Big Red protected me. I was never hurt. I was never slapped. I was never punched. No one tried to have sex with me. He kept me safe.
So really a guardian angel.
Yes. For a
Rolled up
Hell's
on-
Angel.
yeah, or a
He was
Hell's
a
Angel.
guardian angel, right?
But he rolled up on 2 wheels and really, really,
Saved my
at your
life.
lowest point,
Yeah.
saved your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what's
Amazing.
really sad? Is I felt safer in that clubhouse
With the bikers,
than I ever did in my own home.
with the Hells Angels, if anybody can imagine.
Just before I turned 16, he came to me, Big Red, and he said, listen, honey, you gotta go. Because if you don't go now, you're gonna be 16. We're gonna put you to work.
In serious work.
In serious work.
Right, yeah.
He gave me money. And he said, okay, get a bus ticket and away you go. And he let me go. And he gave me money so I could have food and, right? Hell's Angel became my angel.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
Just very.
Yeah.
I
And-
am forever grateful.
Oh,
Forever grateful.
I have no doubt. I have absolutely no doubt. We've talked about addictions and how childhood trauma can result in addictions and sometimes multiple addictions. What was it like for you? I know that you had an addiction to alcohol. What else was a result of all this trauma?
You know what? I just wanted to be loved. To me, it just didn't matter who it was on the other end of that love. I just wanted to be loved.
Right.
And so when a man asked me to marry him, I did. You know, I had...
Acceptance. It was acceptance.
Well, yeah, because I wanted to belong to somebody. I wanted to be somebody's wife. I ended up married and divorced twice by the time I was 27. And well into my third marriage. Didn't get married for a long time, but I'm still with him 30 years later. You know, you can call it an addiction of just that desire, that need to be loved and to be accepted and to belong to somebody and to, you know, work. And I had 3 and 4 jobs at a time just because I never wanted to raise my kids on welfare, and
Right.
addiction to a need to be needed.
So, a people pleaser.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
do this because it will make you like me. Yes?
You know, I would give away my last $10 to somebody else who needed it because their needs were always more important than mine.
Of course.
I went out of my way to do stuff for people just because I wanted them to like me. I wanted them to be happy with me. I wanted them to accept me. You know, I looked at some of my friends at the time, and I would see these wonderful parents that you would just beg for, and they mistreated them. You know, like they didn't appreciate what they had, and
Right.
so that caused a lot of problems in friendship.
Of course, then you had problems with friendship anyway because you weren't anywhere long enough to make a friendship.
Oh, no. And you know, when you look back now, I mean, I didn't have friends. I had drinking buddies,
Right.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it was not
course.
uncommon for me to get off one job in the afternoon, go work in the bar all night, and be tanked by 2 o'clock, and I finished work at 1. That was just the easiest way to live my life.
What were you like as a drunk?
Oh, well, I was not a very nice person. I got into a lot of fights. I was quite rude and arrogant and mean. And it didn't matter to me about friends because friends come, friends go, right? So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I was not very nice. I would fight a lot.
A lot of anger working its way out, I would
Yes.
imagine.
You know, and you're looking for love in all the wrong places. I mean, and I say this openly and freely without judgment for myself, that I did things with men that when I was drunk that I would never conceive to do when I was sober. And I can't explain it. I did it.
Just seeking that approval,
Yes.
needing to be needed. So there's lots of different addictions. Addiction can come in the form of drugs or alcohol or
Love, sex.
yes,
Yep.
behaviors, everything
Financial.
else. Yeah.
Yep.
And these are all as a result of childhood trauma.
Yes.
When we see somebody who hurts, it's because they've been hurt.
Yes.
Can we move ahead a few years? I want to ask you what made you pursue charges against your stepfather when you were 30 years old? That was a long time coming.
Yes.
Why then?
I never had or felt I had the power or the ability to stand up to my family in any way, shape, or form. And so I didn't feel I had the right to say, get out of my life or leave me alone. I chased my mother for love. Oh my God, I chased my mother for love for years and never got it.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to tell you straight up. On my 31st birthday, I got a card from my mother for my birthday. And it read, "Happy birthday. I wish I had a daughter as wonderful as you." I still have that card.
I wish I had a daughter as wonderful as you.
Yes.
Weren't you her daughter?
I hoped I wasn't. I used to say to her all the time, "Can you tell me who my real parents are?"
Yeah.
But I was living in Wainwright at the time with Ron and the kids. And out of the clear blue, my stepfather walked in the door and threw a Bible at me and said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry for everything I ever did to you. I can't believe that you're such a loving and kind person that you are," and blah, blah, blah. And he went on and on and on. And he got down on his knee. He threw a Bible at me and said he had found God. And he was here to make amends. And he put his hands on my knees. He was on the floor. And he put his head down on my knees. And he said to me, "I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." And the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I'm telling you. It was like just before he was released from the Saskatchewan hospital when I was 12. He came out of that door at the hospital and he got on his knees and he put his hands on my legs and he laid his head down and he begged us kids for forgiveness. He was so sorry. He was saying it was because of drugs and alcohol mixture. And so in that moment, I knew there's a problem. And it didn't take me long to realize that it wasn't me he was there to have a relationship with. He wanted access to my kids.
And how old were your kids at that
10
point?
and 12. You know, he got a job in the town and he was driving school bus run out of Ace Taxi. And so he had the responsibility to pick kids up at home and take them to school and pick them up from school and take them home. And so he had all this access time. And let's not forget, I know what this man is capable of.
Of course.
And he's horrible about it. I mean, he burnt my breast with a cigarette 3 places and said to me, for the rest of your life, every time you see that, you have to think of me.
Right, and it takes some kind of cruelty to do
Right?
that to a child.
So I went to his boss and I said, you can't keep him. And he said, why? And so I told him, and he said, was he ever charged? And I said, no. He said, then I can't do anything about it.
So is that where you found your courage?
Yes. I made a pact with myself that day. I'd gone to a lawyer and I had custody papers drawn up to give Ron custody of my children immediately.
Okay.
And I told Ron what I was going to do. And I said, I just said to him, I have to do this. I have to protect my children, and I don't care. I have to protect my kids. They're all I've got. And so I went to the police station, and I was sitting in my car. And I knew one of 3 things was about to happen. A, they were going to believe me and do something. B, I was going to go back to jail.
Because they wouldn't believe you
Right. And I had gone to jail before.
for telling the truth.
But I promised myself in that car before I went into the building that if they did not believe me and they wouldn't do anything, that I was going to kill myself that night. Because I knew, I'm sorry,
Don't be sorry.
I knew that I would not be able to survive and keep my mind knowing that I could not stop him from hurting one more child.
Right.
And so that's what I promised myself that night. And that's why I gave custody of the kids to Ron, because I knew he would protect them in the event that I went to jail or I died.
Right. Right. That's a lot of courage, Shelly. That's a lot of courage, because you were willing to sacrifice yourself for the safety of not just your children, but all children that he had access to. You knew this monster had to be stopped.
Because I knew what he was capable of doing.
Well, you bear the scars.
He was very cruel, not just a sexual fiend, but he was very cruel, dehumanizing in his actions. And I couldn't live with the thought that I couldn't stop him. And so I had to do what I had to do.
Of course, and thank goodness you did. What was it like walking into the police station that night?
Oh my God, I was terrified.
When you finally made the step out of that car, what was it
Oh
like?
my God. How do I even tell them? I mean, it was so long ago, and I had been in jail, and what do you do? I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't have a plan, because I knew if I overthought it, I would chicken out. It was absolutely terrifying, beyond belief.
No kidding. Did they believe you?
That police officer that night was my saving grace. He was so compassionate and so caring, and he made me realize that I had value. He was shocked when I said, I know I'm going to go to jail, but I have to report rape. He was floored. He couldn't get over the fact that I had been punished already. I never saw care and compassion in anybody's eyes, and I've never seen it since, that I saw in his eyes that night. And we spent a very long time talking in great detail about many, many things. And some stuff I can't talk about publicly, but I'm going to tell you that that man had my back. And he told me I was not the one that was going to go to jail. and that he was going to do what he had to do to press charges. And he did. He did. He told me he was proud of me for what I was willing to put at risk.
So you got up the courage, you walked to that police station, you found another guardian angel.
Right.
Were you successful in laying charges?
Yes, surprisingly. The problem became not with the police, but with the prosecutor. And it's not that he didn't want to go after my stepfather, but he said it had been such a long time. And the only reason that they were willing to pursue it is because he was still gaining access to children on his own.
Right. Okay.
So he said, I had to be able to prove, whether they believed me or not, I had to be able to prove that I had told somebody when I was 14. And so that started a huge journey looking for trying to get records and being denied access to child welfare records. And so somebody told me that mental health records are kept for 100 years. So I contacted the Saskatchewan hospital because that's where my psychiatrist was working out of when I was a kid. And long story short, finally contacted him and he wanted to know why I wanted the records. And so I told him and he said, okay, release them. And they gave me this file, and in this file was a bunch of information social services had sent to him from the family file. And I have to tell you, I'm reading through that file in my car and I literally got sick to my stomach, because right there in his own words, the day that I told him, he says, there is no doubt in my mind whatsoever that this child is telling me the truth.
And that's the psychiatrist record?
Yes.
Wow.
So with those files, gave access to them to the prosecutor, who jumped on it right away, went through everything, they pressed charges. Now you have to understand, with my stepdad, it wasn't a point of, I was an adult, I was a grown adult.
Yes,
and I
you were
didn't
30,
think he would
right?
come and jump me on the street.
Right.
But I didn't doubt that there would be a chance that he would stand in the bushes across the street and shoot me through the window.
Right. Because you're still afraid he's going to kill you.
Yes. Oh, hey, yeah.
Yeah.
Once they pressed those charges, yes,
Yeah.
I knew.
And especially then.
Yes.
Because you still believe what he told you at the age of 12,
Yes.
that given any opportunity, he's going to take you out.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So he disappeared. Once he was charged, he disappeared. And the police notified me and let me know they did not know where he was. And so life went into an absolute tizzy. And I said to Ron, that's it, we're moving. And he said, what do you mean? I said, put the house up for sale, we're out. I cannot stay here with my children.
He knew where you lived.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. He knew exactly where we lived.
Right.
And so very quickly, and thank God, we got an offer on the house like within days of putting it up for sale. And Ron and I left with the kids, and we moved several times just so that nobody could track us easily. You know, there was a lot of people in the world, my mother being one of them. Don't be so stupid. Nothing's going to happen. He's not going to do anything.
Were your mom and your stepdad still together at that
No.
point? Okay.
No, that's what we did for 2 years. As we bounced all over. You know, we went to pretrial. Went into Saskatchewan, had an armed police officer with us the whole time because I
And-
was terrified.
Was your stepfather in pretrial?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's how terrified I was, right? That we had to have armed service because I was terrified that he would kill me.
Right.
He made some threatening comments to my brother-in-law in the courthouse. He basically told him to watch your kid because they had a little girl. Yeah.
In the courthouse?
Yes. And it was the first time since I was 13 that I saw my friend that he raped was in the pretrial. So when we left there and the judge said that there was plenty enough evidence that they were going to go forward with the trial, we left town. Again, scooted, right? Moved from where we had moved to another location.
So you were running.
Oh yeah, running
You were
for my
running.
life and my
Exactly.
kids' lives
Yeah.
because he would have killed me. There's no
Right.
doubt in my mind.
Right. So you're just trying to stay a jump ahead.
Jump
of him.
ahead of him.
Right. Right.
So At one point, we moved to Edmonton. And you get lost in a big city really easy.
Right.
I got a chance to go to school. And I got a phone call one day. And it was the prosecutor. And he said to me, "It's over." I said, "What do you mean it's over?" He said, "You don't have to hide anymore. There will be no trial. He's in jail." I said to him, "Is he in custody?" And he said, "Better than that, he's in jail." And I went, "What?"
Yeah. What?
He had apparently gotten drunk, got into a hit and run accident, was pulled over by the police. When they pulled him out of the truck, they realized that there was a sawed-off shotgun on the seat next to him, my picture, and what looked like a listing of addresses. And
So he was coming for you.
Hey, he told the police that night, "You better lock me up because she's as good as dead."
Wow.
He was charged for possession of an illegal firearm, uttering death threats to a Crown witness, and driving while he was intoxicated, and a hit and run accident. He got 9 months for that. 9 months. Somewhere, once they got him into jail or whatever, and he had to appear on his new charges, he said,
On the abuse charges.
no, on the weapons charge and the
Okay.
accident.
Okay.
He appeared in court and apparently told the judge, "Well, you might as well lock me up for the other thing too, because I did it."
So he just openly confessed.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to go through a trial or
No.
anything.
Nope. And he got 2 years, 2.5 years sentence.
In combination with the weapons charges? That
Oh
on
yeah,
top?
they ran together, trust me. And of course, time served. That was it.
Wow. What did you do when they said, "Hey, it's over. He's in jail"? What did you do?
Well, the first thing I did is I almost fainted.
Right.
And I fell on the floor. I was screaming.
Right.
And then I did what anybody else would do. I got in my car and I drove to my mother. And I said, I was just bawling, and I just screamed at her, "I told you I never lied. I told you I never lied."
Right.
And she looked at me and said, "I know. I've always known." And in that second, and my aunt and one of my mom's friends was at the table when she said it. Sincerely, from the deepest root of my heart, I had to stop and make a decision. I wanted to kill her on the spot. And I opted to just back myself out the door.
Wise decision.
Can you imagine? I know. I've always known. I never doubted that she knew, but somewhere in my heart, I guess I begged that she didn't
hoped.
know.
You hoped. Yeah, and one of the most dangerous things that we live with, Shelly, is hope.
Yeah.
Because hope makes us believe that there's something beyond, that there's something better.
Right. And that's what hope got me. But at least it got me the truth.
And he got in jail.
He did. He did. And for the rest of my life, or his life, I knew that if any other child ever came forward and said anything about him, they would have to believe that child.
So you won.
I won. I did.
Good job.
Thanks. Done.